When I was 5 years old, my parents brought home my little brother Joe. Well, he was perfect in every way imaginable. He was tiny and had little old man wrinkles. Even his crying was magic to me. It was then that I knew that I wanted to be a father. I helped change his diapers. I almost single-handedly potty trained him. To be honest, I don't know if it was the fact that Joe was one of those good-behaving babies or some genetic predisposition that drove me. All that I know is that my path towards fatherhood began there and led me to where I am today. Because even as a child, I knew that no matter what else happened in life, I was going to have kids and be the best father that I could be for them. From a very young age, we encourage our youth to plan out the trajectory for the rest of their lives. Age 18 frequently raises the question of where do you want to go to college, as you're expected to have a solid blueprint for your major, your future career, and anything else you would want to accomplish in the rest of your days. It is only human nature to wish for a beautiful life on paper, but how can we guarantee that everything will play out in our favor? In the end, we all have to be careful for what we wish for. Fatherhood by Mizell. My sophomore year in college, I met Hannah. Well, she was beautiful in all ways. She was a history major with a minor in economics. She was brilliantly intelligent and stunningly good-looking, which made me wonder why on earth she took a second to look at me. I was prematurely balding and in general studies. She just came up to me in the cafeteria one day when I was sitting alone eating my bologna sandwich and chips. She just plopped down on the other side of the table like we'd been meeting that way for months. "Do you have any extra mayonnaise?" she asked, already reaching for one of my extra packets. That was how I met my future wife. That lunch turned into a relationship worthy of all the poets and epics that have ever put pen to paper. Well, at least in my eyes. We continued to meet for lunch, and I always had an extra mayo packet regardless of what we were eating. It was our little inside joke. When she asked me why I hadn't picked a definitive major, I was hesitant to tell her the real reason. You see, the real reason I hadn't was I was already planning on being a stay-at-home dad, which then brings up the discussion of having kids, which is about as taboo to discuss as early on in a relationship as past relationships. Then a smile the size of her entire face appeared. "So I'm going to be the big moneymaker, the one wearing the pants, bringing home the bacon, making that dough." She took my hand and kissed it on the middle knuckle. I will never forget that light brushing of her lips confirming our future. Then, 7 months after we first began trying, Anna was late. We tried so hard to contain our excitement, knowing that even the stress from the past few months could be the culprit. Then, a week later, after nothing happened, we decided to crack open one of those mini pregnancy tests we bought in anticipation of that moment. The seconds felt like years as we waited for a red plus sign to appear. Then, slowly, a red cross faded slowly into existence, and with it, the knowledge that we were going to have a baby. I began not to only read, but study the baby preparation books. I destroyed my mother-in-law's baby name book, simply reading each entry over with our last name and using them in sentences I assumed I would use. "Isaiah, you cut that out." "Priscilla, honey, your mother needs help with the laundry." "How was school today, JJ?" "Your dress is beautiful, Erin." As far as family is concerned, my parents had cut me out of their lives when I went to college, upset over my choice to pursue fatherhood over a career. Her parents, on the other hand, were already looking into houses near ours. Anna's mom started planning the baby shower. We thought a month before the due date would be safe. However, Anna's body had different plans. I must have been sleeping hard because she ended up hitting me to wake me up. I sat up with a star and looked at her in the dark. The streetlight shone through our window, illuminating the tears that poured down her cheek. I think I'm in labor," she said. The fear in her voice grabbed me even more than the words themselves. This was wrong. I got out of bed and grabbed my phone from the side table as I went. I had our OBGYN's office on speed dial, knowing that no matter what, there'd be a nurse on call to field questions and concerns. Like what to do when your wife goes in labor at 32 weeks. Every bump, turn, and stoplight on the way to the hospital was a torture. She was in agonizing pain, and the car was just a sealed box of hopeless fear. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. We were supposed to sit at home, drinking coffee, counting through the contractions together. But there was no counting contractions or taking breaks in between. There was just fear, pain, and hopelessness. We got to the hospital, and I barely remembered to car and park before I was out and around. There was a pool of blood on the passenger's front leather seat, but I didn't allow myself to dwell on that fact as I dragged my all but pale-faced wife through the emergency room doors. We were swarmed by nurses the moment we walked through the entrance. They gently but firmly pulled her from me and placed her in a wheelchair, while others simultaneously asked for information. Right then, I realized I'd left my wallet back in the car. I'll be right back, honey. I just need to go grab my wallet. Within the time it took me to grab my wallet and return to the emergency room, they'd already carted her into an operating room that I was not allowed into. I was instructed to the ER waiting room and shown to the coffee bar. I couldn't help but hate the poor nurses who showed me those things. Coffee? You think I want coffee while my wife and future child are literally fighting for their lives? What made matters even worse was that I desperately did. So there I was, sitting on a hard chair, sipping from a cup of terrible styrofoam coffee, waiting. An hour or so later, I honestly couldn't tell you how long I sat there because it felt like years. The doctor came out and knelt in front of me. We lost your wife was how he started. As if Anna was just a piece of jewelry you couldn't find. They'd lost her. The rest of the words became white noise, cutting through here and there like a bad radio connection. Words like hemorrhage and uncontrollable, and they came through the words that cut through the static entirely. The baby has survived but is stable, but will need to stay in the NICU for a while. The baby! It's a girl, he said, and left me there as I began to weep. A while turned out to be 4 weeks. As far as premature babies go, our Elizabeth was pretty healthy and well developed. She surpassed all the expectations of the nurses and doctors as she grew perfectly healthily and naturally. Those 4 weeks were a blur to me. It was surreal, the mix of joy and sorrow everyone had. Anna's parents came up to bury their own daughter, but also to meet their granddaughter. I brought Elizabeth home to an empty house, placed her in her crib, and just stared at her for the longest time. Anna's parents stayed with us for the first week and helped me get the house in order. Elizabeth cried nearly non-stop. Even when she slept, I would lie awake in our two-big bed, feeling the emptiness beside me and knowing that it would never be filled. Then it was just Elizabeth and me. The reason Anna was gone. I tried so hard to separate the two. It obviously wasn't Elizabeth's fault that Anna had died, but if we had not tried to have kids, and Anna would still be alive, and those were the facts. It didn't help that Elizabeth cried nearly nonstop, nothing like the experience I had with my baby brother. Over the next few weeks, I began to approach the end of my very short rope. Elizabeth screamed, and I would scream right back. I began to shout unfair accusations right into her tiny, pitiful face. Her lack of understanding, the fact she refused to contest my horrific claims angered me even more. I could not take it. I simply needed sleep. I thought it over and decided she'd be okay for one night on her own. She wouldn't starve. Her diaper would be changed the moment I returned, and it was good to let a baby cry it out, right? So I changed her, fed her, and swaddled her, and I placed her back into her crib. Then I left her, along with my phone, knowing that the only way to get some real rest was to make sure there were no distractions. I then packed a small bag, and I left her, along with my phone, knowing that the real way to get some rest was to make sure there were no distractions. I then checked into the motel a few blocks down for the night. It was 4 weeks later when the cops began pounding on my motel door. I calmly got out of bed and opened my front door. Right then, I was very viciously handcuffed. I could only imagine these cops were the same ones that found Elizabeth. I didn't protest as they dragged me towards the cruiser, almost ripping my shoulder out of its socket. I didn't protest. I didn't put up a fight. After all, I was guilty. Guilty of thinking I was meant to be a father, but guiltier of being completely wrong. Thank you.